stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
A Black future happens all the time. It's built on a foundation of those who have paved the way. A generation ago, all of this would have seemed unheard of. And what's new to the world now will be incomparable to what's coming up next. Trust your dream. The future is counting on it.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Black Techies podcast brought to you by HBCU Digital Network. I am your host, Herbert Seward, aka the Black Tony Stark. I am joined this week, and we're welcoming back one of our Hall of Fame rotation members, Leslie Moore, Southern University grad, entrepreneur, gamer extraordinaire. And we also have our host emeritus and founder, David Matthews, aka Packet Stealer. Welcome back, you guys.
Hey, what's going on?
Glad to be back. Sorry I missed last week.
Hey man, we talked offline about that, but yeah, you have an excused absence. You're good. but yeah, before we really get started and kind of dig into some of the topics we're going to talk tonight, I wanted to really give a big shout out to a lot of the esports, the HBCU esports entities out there, both platforms that cover HBCU esports and new HBCU esports programs and old ones that reached out to us on Twitter and some of our other social media outlets during the course of the week. I saw a lot of activity. We got a chance to speak to some people, and the fact of the matter is that esports in general is huge. The fact that we got our own flavor in terms of esports for our HBCU community is huge. So big shout out to the HBCU Esports League, HBCU Esports Yard, the HBCU Esports Alliance, and a ton of other entities. Benedict Esports, Johnson C. Smith Esports Team, Dr. John Cash. We had him on early on the show, and shameless plug, we're trying to get him back soon. So Dr. Cash, if you're watching, help us out, hit us up. We would love to check on the progress of your program, and pretty much just a big shout out to the HBCU community in general for really giving us a lot of love and a lot of feedback. We got some nice returns on our social media following, in terms of the greater world of Black Tech Twitter. So we've got some pretty new followers, some good new followers, and I'm really appreciated. So before we get started, man, what are some things that are on y'all mind news wise that y'all may have seen or heard or thought about this week? That has just got you raising the eyebrow.
I'm not impressed by Apple.
We're going to talk about that later. We're going to talk about that later in the show. So, Apple didn't drop yet another event, but we're going to save the deep dive to that for a little bit later on. The Queen.
Oh yeah, that's one of the large, especially if you're
Irish Twitter is Twitter's lighting up.
Irish Twitter, Caribbean Twitter, colonial Twitter. I mean, it's and for those folks that may have been under the rock for the last couple of days or so, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, I believe, passed away. She's 96 years old. And her passing away triggered a lot of interesting responses from all over the world, particularly places where there are a lot of people of color, all over the world, because the British and monarchies and colonial history has not really been kind to those guys in terms of legacies. So, in this day and age where information gets around so fast, and the response to said information is swift and sometimes really, really vicious. This is pretty vicious, and it was something that seeing it play out in real time was really interesting. It's just like, okay,
Seeing people, seeing their responses, or it's kind of a range of responses, and I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with it or how to think of it myself because on the one hand, I think Britain has actually gone down as far as the amount of uh colonized or the amount of territories they actually possess. And I think she was doing a lot to try to repair the crown's reputation in that aspect. But then on the other hand, as Roberto colorfully pointed out on one of my posts, there's still a lot that that the crown has done or could do to kind of repair those past sins. Not necessarily saying that she was the cause behind all of it, but this is the British crown, right? This is they still kind of represent the largest empire in the history of the world. So
yeah,
obviously they're not there anymore, but that legacy is still kind of ingrained in history in our minds. So I can see I can simultaneously weep, or be sympathetic with the Brits who might be listening to this show. um that's part of their culture. But at the same time, their culture has had a lot of impact in the rest of the world. So
yeah,
you can acknowledge both. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
yeah. And I think well, I mean, if you're a Briton, if you're Scottish or Irish, obviously you have a little bit different relationship with um, the British monarchy, the English monarchy, than anybody else. But I think it's more representative of that period of time in general, in terms of where European powers, whether it's Britain, whether it's Spain, whether it's Portugal, or anybody else for that matter, that had imperial designs on other places in the world, without the permission of other people. Um, it's it, that I guess that emotion that came from her passing, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is representative of a lot of that. When we talk about Caribbean folks, Jamaicans in particular, you know, the first discussion when it comes to Britain is, where's our check?
Right.
Cut us our check. And I think it's for lack of a better term, is something that applies here too, because a lot of the vestiges of what you know the British Empire was, even though America got independent and started doing their own sort of thing, which that's a whole nother podcast and a
Right.
whole nother topic. um
Mhm.
that's carryover, and it's something that I think a lot of people that don't view history through that lens could stand to take a step back and be like, wow, okay, I can understand um why this could be, you know why this could be problematic for for people of color, or why they feel that way. So um it was just a tidbit of news. Obviously, you don't wish that sort of, you don't wish ill will on. Ooh, where did our friend Leslie go?
Oh man, you lost. I
Come back. Oh, there she goes.
was like,
It's like it's like, come back, fam. But yeah, I think but I think it's something that we have to really look through a very broad lens, in terms of people that know a little bit about the history from different perspectives. You know, yeah. I mean, I don't feel, I'm not going to say that I don't feel any sort of sympathy for Britons, that something that really identifies with their identity is gone. I think that's a very humbling thing to deal with, and it's something that, yeah, from that end, I'm pretty sympathetic.
Mhm.
At the same time, uh, I'm not in.
At the same time, you're black.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. At the same time, that pomp and circumstance don't mean a lot to me, because when you were doing that pomp and circumstance, the byproducts of that pomp and circumstance is the reason why, um, for better or worse, we have what we have, you know, and it's something that, if you're on one end of the spectrum looking at it through a certain lens, it's hard to, it's hard to fathom, how anybody could be angry about it. But if you look at it through the other lens, it's like what you want. So, I mean, I think just from a historical perspective, her passing is big anyway, because it's, anytime you talk about things, um, like of that nature, and you see that stuff really happen in real time,
Mhm.
you know, you have to get a little bit of time and distance away from it for you to really see the impact of it.
Right.
But you know, um,
You got a
now
comment
that,
down there.
yeah, yeah. Shout out to Lauren Hazel who joined our show from Facebook. Thank you for watching, ma'am. We appreciate it. So it's you know, now that we've kind of talked about the big news in the room, there are other news items that we're not going to talk about, that deal with, somebody with orange hair. We don't we're we don't do that here. So I mean, we'll
Please,
say, yeah, we
please do that.
have to wait for our boy Dom and
Oof.
his commentary to get back on the show. But we touched on something on the last show about the acquisition of Activision by Microsoft.
Mhm.
And I wanted to circle back around to it because I don't think we got a chance to really do a deep dive into it, and to really, just talk about what that means for the industry. Um, for those of you guys out there that are new to the podcast or new to the gaming landscape and environment, Activision is a very storied name in game development. Um, they're around for when they go back to the first consoles. You know, I mean, Pitfall, Activision. So, I mean, and that's probably one of the most iconic titles in the history of video games, right there. Um, it, Microsoft gobbling those guys up, it's kind of got me feeling some kind of way, especially um, given the fact that they have really flourished as an independent entity in terms of developing software for multiple platforms. I wanted to get you guys to really kind of, just to kind of offer your take on what it's going to mean in the long term for titles, for gamers, for consumers. Because I think, like I said, I think it's pretty big.
It's massive because if you think about a lot of the PlayStation exclusive games that Blizzard made, that's gone. But kind of almost as a, all right, I guess kind of moment, Sony did buy out. um,
Bungie.
but, yeah, they bought
Yeah,
Bungie, so that takes Halo away from being exclusive right there. It's when we talked about it the first time, I said it was gonna start a tit for tat. And I also know a lot of there's going to be a lot of blowbacks around the world just from anti-monopolizing and antitrust laws.
yeah,
So
That's
it's funny that you mentioned that. So there, if you've been following the news around this, Sony. So I think there was
yeah.
so the Brazilian government, I think it's Brazil. They published like public statements or whatever about potential mergers, and what Sony's thoughts about it got out, and basically their whole thing was they're afraid of Call of Duty. What they don't want is for Call of Duty to be exclusive to the Xbox, and then because that's such a huge franchise, that's gonna they're afraid of it taking away half their player base to go to Xbox or PC instead of PlayStation. Xbox was like, no, we're going to keep PlayStation, or we're going to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. We're not going to take it away. But here's the kicker. Xbox Game Pass. Would you rather pay $70 on PlayStation, or would you rather pay $10 a month and play it on Xbox Game Pass? So that's why that Sony's they a little scared right now.
Yeah,
Which
Yeah, yeah, a
they're
little petro
terrified.
man. Yeah, I'm
but
petro man.
it's a little put an asterisk on that, right? Because Sony is notorious for making things exclusive, right? So they're the next Final Fantasy 16,
No,
15,
this should be
16
17.
or 17, whatever. It's going to be PlayStation exclusive, or at least console exclusive to PlayStation. It might come out on PC. And they had a few Spider-Man, or it's on PC, but or Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, all these games coming out. They still have their whole. I don't know. It's a little it's a little disingenuous of Sony to say this necessarily, but I get I get I get why they're scared.
Yeah,
And let's not even get into the fact they're still dealing with the Blizzard blowback from their super
Yeah,
misogynistic regime.
that's
So
the
you got
other
to deal
part.
with that too. So it's like, okay, you got the gaming side, which you don't know what's going to be exclusive anymore. I just started getting on Game Pass because a lot of the games that I didn't want to buy just happen to be for free. So why not? But then you got to deal with the walkouts that Activision and Blizzard is still trying to deal with. Their leadership is still in a massive carousel and shuffle mode. They got to get all that together before they can talk about these are the games we're about to start putting out. It's like they
Right.
almost took a poison pill on this merger.
Some people actually think it's a good thing that they're being bought by Microsoft now, because now in Microsoft's corporate, they're more positive, more inclusive, positive corporate culture can kind of infiltrate Activision, and so hopefully they won't be as toxic as they are now. So I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft, their environment recently, I wouldn't say within the last 5 years, has gotten out of the Blizzard Activision type of mindset. So
Yeah,
their diversity has gotten better. So I
yeah,
mean, it's a good
yeah.
company to try to, like, we know how to fix this problem. We know how to fix it slowly where it makes sense. So they can probably fix Activision Blizzard, but that was
There's a
a hell of a problem to walk into.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, I know a bunch of people who work for Microsoft. In fact, one of the guys that's in the Black Techie Collective, go ahead and join if you aren't already a part of it. He's trying to basically recruit me to go to Microsoft. So and
hey,
I'm not even
Hey man,
hey, hook a brother up.
hey, I'm
I
not
mean,
saying I'm not gonna I might not say no. That's all I'll say.
hey, I mean,
But we'll
I
see.
mean, I mean, I get that I technically, quote unquote, work for the competition, but I mean, they don't have to know nothing about that.
I'm a free agent. Help, help me.
But I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. But I mean, all that to say, like, it's Microsoft's culture is a lot better than it used to be. Way better than it used to be. I think they're. I mean, they still. I mean, it's Microsoft, right? Probably still have. They're still big, and it's like steering a cruise ship, right? But at the same time, I think they're not Activision.
Oh boy.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
They're not.
Oh,
They're
Phil
they're
not.
not.
Spencer will kick you out.
Out of there, son. But yeah, I think and I think that says a lot about, you know, tech and game in tech employment culture as it is right now at some of the bigger places. And I'm technically kind of finding that out, firsthand, um, because I work for an aforementioned uh, big name that I am not going to divulge here on the show for obvious reasons. But I'll just say it starts with an
Wow.
A. But it's I mean, corporate culture is corporate culture wherever you go, but it's very magnified when you go to certain places. Particularly as it relates to technology, and it's something that you know myself and oh well, just as a as a little bit of background, all of us that are part of the Black Techies have pretty diverse tech backgrounds. Like myself and Dave, for example. Well, Dave can't really talk about what he does because you know he might have badges knocking at his door, but
I'm a network
um,
engineer, but
yeah,
as you might be able to tell from my little name tag here, that might not be the case in the future.
yeah, but yeah, we've been peeping that, and I mean, myself, I'm a general. I'm what's called an IT generalist, meaning that um, I have a grasp of a lot of pretty good. I have a grasp of a lot of disciplines in the information technology space. My current, discipline now is cloud computing and is cloud computing and you know um, Microsoft and Azure and development. So a lot of us have really diverse backgrounds, and the one common thread that I think we all have when it comes to those things is having to deal with the differences between working with regular employees and working with regular employees as it relates to technology. And I got to tell you, man, you know, uh, if you're on the outside looking in, you don't understand the struggles, man. You really don't. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to um, be able to process those things and to be very effective and efficient at your job. While, how can I put this nicely? Tech explaining
Oof, oof.
that to the layman, and it's I'm seriously and I don't want other laymen out there to kind of take offense to that, because it's not my intent to um to diminish the fact that there is a need for that, but um at the same time it's a challenge. And I think a lot of what we see now going on with these mergers, and particularly what's going on with, some of the larger fish been buying up some of the smaller fish in terms of, our development or gaming and the development, landscape. It's it speaks to that a lot, and I think it's something that people are not really going to understand until the landscape is no longer the landscape anymore, and there are like two or three big entities, and there are no exclusives anywhere except for one platform, and it's like, geez, that sucks. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, I don't know how to feel about you know the purchase, because normally things like that, particularly um when companies that have a really diverse scope, like Microsoft, um, purchases something, a company that's really, really game specific or game development specific, like Activision. You know, that doesn't really end well a lot of times. It really doesn't. And I know we have our friends at Google to thank for that. Thank you, Google. But
Mhm.
but um, it's a like I said, man, it's something to really keep an eye on, and it's something to um, we're not going to be able to really see the forest from the trees in terms of the results for a long time. And I think, uh, the kid on Christmas morning that picks up their console and wants to get that latest edition of Call of Duty, but can't because they got console or platform, or they got a PC. Um, yeah, that could be a problem. Although I think the PC folks are kind of safe
Oh,
with
we're good
Microsoft.
here.
We
We
good.
good here.
Oh
You
well,
have to
yeah, yeah.
specifically
PC
say
Nation right here.
we are
You
not
know,
putting it on PC, or there's no
yeah,
way for you to get it on PC for PC
I
people to
mean,
be
the
like,
way things are going, if Sony keeps putting all their games on PC, you might as well just get a PC and you can play your PlayStation and Xbox game.
exactly.
The
pretty
You
way
only
much,
gotta
things are
buy the
going.
game. The thing is with a PC, you only gotta buy it once. It's yours for the rest of your life. It's even after the PC is gone, you can just re-download it.
pretty much, pretty
Mhm.
much. Well,
That
on
yeah,
that note,
that's I love that part. I'm sorry. That's one I will say that's one of the things I miss about PC gaming is that being able to go back and play old game. Like you can go back and play the original Doom right now.
oh yeah, that's and if you're looking at my background right here, you see the my background in my office with my banners up in the back.
I
You
need
see the
that desk
multiple, yeah,
now. I'm sorry.
with the multiple monitors and the football going on in the back. That that Optiplex that's at the bottom of that desk, that's my Linux platform, and that's also where I dual boot and game at for PC. You know, it may not look like much, but the insides do. So,
It's not about
so
what's on the outside, it's about what's on the inside.
yes, sir.
Herbs,
But
you got that sleeper PC.
Mhm.
always sleeper cell, always. On that note, we are going to go into our first ad break, and when we come back, we will continue with some other topics. Stay tuned.
We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
A black future happens all the time. It's built on a foundation of those who have paved the way. A generation ago, all of this would have seemed unheard of. And what's new to the world now will be incomparable to what's coming up next. Trust your dream. The future is counting on it.
And we are back. Um, Next point of conversation.
Come on.
Go ahead. It's
Okay,
okay.
Come on.
where's my banner at? Hold on for a second.
This is a safe space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For those of you that are catching the podcast for the first time, when we talk about stuff, things that make absolutely no sense, and we might end up being bleeped or edited out, we tend to put up a banner like this. The views of Herbert Stewart are not necessarily views of TBT or the HBCU Digital Network, just to kind of cover our network overlords at HBCU Digital. That being said, Apple has had yet another event. We're supposed to talk about the event and what was dropped, but it's kind of old. I mean, and I don't mean to go on a rant here, but how many events are they going to drop in a given point in time a year? There's only so many things you're going to drop.
Well, I think they like to focus on certain things. That's the only thing I can think of. Like they like having an event just for the Mac, one just for like their mobile products, and then one for their software, for their developer conference. So that's it also allows them to control the narrative, control the media narrative, because now everyone's talking about Apple, Apple, Apple. So
I mean,
you know,
I get it. And if you're part of the Apple collective, shout out to the Borg. But you're not going to mind it. But from those of us that are,
I'm kind of sort of
see, there
in
you
it,
go. You've been assimilated.
I don't know, one of us.
Good checking.
Resistance
Got him.
is futile. But yeah, I mean, and this is no shade to Apple. This is actually a testament to how resilient that ecosystem is to its customers, because for those of us that do delve into other platforms, or Amazon folk, or not Amazon, Android folks, um that do delve into other platforms, from the outside looking in, we're like, y'all doing this again? This is kind of old. But for folks that are immersed in the ecosystem, and customers and consumers that love Apple products, they can't get enough of it. And I think it's definitely a testament to um, the popularity and the ease of use of that ecosystem. And there are plenty of folks out there that love Apple products, like our boy Dom, who's not on the show. He's an
Yeah,
Apple.
Yeah, I think me and him are the Apple stands here.
Yeah, Stan. Yeah, I mean,
I don't want
I'm
to say
a,
I'm
I'm
an
a
Apple stand. I mean, I before my iPhone 12 Pro, I had a Pixel what was it, Pixel 4, and so I don't know. I like the Pixel. I like
I
Android.
love the
I don't
Pixel.
hate it. So honestly I like Android. I like the choice that I get from Android. I like the customization and but like you said, it's the ecosystem, right? I like the ecosystem that Apple has built and it just makes doing things a lot easier or it makes using different devices a lot easier. Like my AirPods, right? I can just keep these in and just use these literally with every single Apple product that I have and I don't have to repair them. So it's just I don't know. I prefer the ease of use and the maybe I'm
Yeah,
lazy.
and see, and that's the thing. I like I said, for me, and like I said, I guess the part of me that kind of is like, meh. I'm a uh, I'm an Android guy. I like the idea of being able to have a platform that isn't completely closed off to me that I can customize and do whatever I want to do in it. Now, as an administrator, or as somebody that manages an enterprise environment, I hate Apple products. I
Mm.
hate them because they don't play well with anybody else. They don't. You try to load an email client on an Apple product, it's like if it's not in the Apple store and you got to side load it, you have to damn near jailbreak your phone or you jailbreak your iPad or jailbreak iOS itself. Depending on what version of the Apple OS you're running on a laptop or desktop or what have you. And this has been a complaint for as long as Apple has been its own entity. You know what I'm saying? It's something that unless you're just you're in that ecosystem and you don't really care, um, because those folks really don't care because it's like yeah, so it works for me, it's good. So I mean, it's definitely something um, that gives Apple an advantage in terms of retaining its customer base. So uh it's something yeah, my girl just told me to peace out on the way out. But it's really something that again, if you're simply a consumer and you're on the outside looking in, but you just love Apple products, you really don't get it, unless you're kind of neck deep into it and you
I will
really
say I will say this. Like the phones aside, I think the only other product that's probably still leaps and bounds above the Android equivalent is the Apple Watch. And when you
yeah,
look at if you look
Okay.
at what Apple is offering with that, especially with the Apple Watch Ultra and what they're trying to do with it, they're basically trying to make that into like a Garmin like alternative, like for people who do like extreme sports, who mountaineers, divers. Although I think I was watching a review from a guy named Dave 2D, and he was saying that for divers, it's not quite there yet because um you can't see what your what the amount of oxygen you have left in your tank. So it's kind of useless as a diving computer because you can't see at least from that aspect you can't see how much oxygen you have. And but that could probably be fixed with software probably. So if they just pass it in with the latest with the next watch OS version, they could potentially compete a lot better. And if you think it's too expensive, I think it's like 700 $800, which is expensive, but when you look at the competition, they're actually more expensive. So like that Garmin I was talking about, it's like $1,200.
yeah,
Right? But Apple is doing all of this on the Apple Watch, and you can do more. You have more features with the Apple Watch than you have with those with the Garmin's and Casio. I forgot who else makes those super expensive watches for like extreme sports and stuff like that. But or extreme temperatures or whatever. So I will say, I mean, on the phone side, you could, you if you got a nice Android phone, a Samsung phone, a Pixel, right? You'll be fine. I think they still compete very favorably with the iPhone. But on the Apple Watch side, until the Pixel Watch comes out, until Google comes out with the Pixel Watch and they make what is it? I forgot what their operating system is called on their watch. Like until they make that as good as Watch OS and make those Android watches more compelling, the Apple that's that I will say I know I'm an Apple fan, but I will say that I think that's the one place where I think Apple is going to dominate for right now until Google gets its act together as far as smartwatches.
But that's the thing. Google,
Google's got their hands full.
yeah, Google is the equivalent of an ADHD child in tech.
They are.
Seriously.
Oh my god, yes.
That is accurate. That is the most accurate statement I've
Yeah,
ever heard.
because I mean, they start something, it has their attention for a hot second, and then next thing you know, it's like, I'm good. Like, and I hate, yeah, and I hate the kind of poo poo on Google because I love my Pixel too. I mean, yeah, I rock with this. I mean, the Pixel is the best phone that I've ever had, and I say this
Got the
as I
folding phone. I see you.
yeah,
I
and I
got the
say
same
this as
blueprint. So.
as I have an Apple work phone.
I even have an
That
Android work phone. They asked me
yeah
if I wanted. They're like, "Oh, do you want an iPhone?" I sure don't.
yeah
I'm good.
yeah, but I think like I said, I think the big thing about seeing these things drop the way that they do, and as in terms of Apple is again their consumer community, um, their consumer base is so engrossed in their products and their it's so positive that they can drop whatever they want, and folks are going to be like, "Yay, Apple!" You know, "Yay, another drop, second one this
But
week."
true. And I mean, if you think about it though, Apple is becoming like Toyota and Honda, where people will buy it just because of the
Mm,
brand. Like because of what they've established. Like people will just buy an Apple product, the next one, because it's Apple, right? People buy Toyotas just because of Toyota. They don't even cross shop. You should cross shop, but they don't even cross shop.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and I think you know, uh, ultimately, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I see that being the same status quo when it comes to that, because customers in America love Apple. Now, step outside of America and go to Europe and certain other places. You're not going to see many Apple products in Japan or Korea. You just ain't.
This is
They've
true.
got a more competitive market than on top of that. Realistically,
Yeah.
the only
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
I'm excited to see is watch people with Apple 10 watches and Apple 10 phones start to panic as their phones start to slow down. I'm waiting on that. I can't wait.
Hmm.
Just, why is my phone tripping? It's been so great for so many years. Yeah, right.
Slow.
No, that's true though. I mean,
Slow.
like people talk about iMessage locking and blue bubbles and green bubbles, but like outside of the United States, they're like, "What are you talking about? Just use WhatsApp."
Mhm.
like, like
Mhm.
they like outside the US, it's all about WhatsApp and Telegram and Signal. Like
Yeah.
iMessage isn't a thing, at least not
Yeah.
it not like it is here.
Although WhatsApp and Telegram these days is like the wild wild west. It's like
Ooh,
for real.
WhatsApp is
You
a
yeah,
what's
yeah,
what WhatsApp is what's
yeah, I
popping.
don't know, man. You might be you might stumble into some cloak and dagger type stuff on Telegram. You never know. But you next thing you know, somebody hiding documents on Telegram. That are Mar-a-Lago. So I mean, it's
Didn't hear that
just
here.
No comment. No
Didn't hear
no
that
comment.
here.
comment. So
Put
I'm
that banner back up.
wait a minute. I'm looking for the banner. you
Ooh.
know, but it's definitely again, all jokes aside, it's definitely one of those things where the longevity of that consumer base for them is what drives Apple to do the things that they do. And as long as the consumer base in the United States is there, they're not really worried about anything else. So, it's like I said, I mean, it's another drop. You know, I'm still meh about the whole thing.
Mhm.
Because it's another Apple drop, and it's like, all right, didn't you just guys just drop for the 14 last week? Didn't you guys just drop for another product last week? I mean, are you guys going to do a gaming platform or something? I don't know. I mean, I would definitely raise the eyebrow about that. But if it's net for the next MacBook or Studio or iPhone, yeah, you
They
know,
could. They like if Apple if they play their cards right, they could legitimately
Mhm.
make some kind of uh gaming ecosystem considering how powerful their chips are. Or like relatively anyway, like compared to like, not, you're an Apple GPU is not beating an Nvidia 3080. Don't, please, no. Don't
No,
do
no,
not buy a
fam.
Mac for gaming. Stop. Turn away.
Don't
But
do it
no,
to yourself. Don't get fooled.
but I mean, they are powerful for like productivity, but not gaming. But that said, if they keep making those year over year improvements with their M2, M3, whatever's in the future, I could see them trying to make like some kind of gaming ecosystem within like the Apple TV as like a console, a TV console, the obviously the iPhone and the Mac. But I don't know if they will though. I mean, I think they could, but I don't know if they will. But because they got their Metal API, Metal 2, I'm sorry, Metal 2 API for gaming. Because I think they demonstrated it back in May, April, whenever or June rather, when WWDC. But I don't know. Yeah, you're not going to convince PC gamers to go to Mac, so that's not happening.
Not happening. It's not happening, fam.
Nope.
Nope.
And I
Stop.
say
Not,
that yeah, not even
yeah,
me.
yeah. And I mean, you know, and I say that it's interesting that you said that, Dave, because I think we've talked on and off again on this podcast about you know the the current present and future of cloud gaming. You know, just like Dave and Dominique and some other folks are Apple stands. I am a Shadow stand when it comes to the Shadow cloud platform for gaming. I mean, I think me personally, I've had Shadow since it came out. You know, I ain't got stock, but I should. But um, it's one of the when you're close to a data center and you've got your internet right, it's one of the best products out there for cloud gaming.
And
You know,
Stadia, ironically, even though we
yeah,
talked about Google being ADHD, but Stadia, performance wise, Stadia
it's
is
great. It's
amazing.
great. And I mean, I
Like
saw some of this.
I was surprised. I was like, man, this is
Yeah,
like 1-to-1 here.
yeah, and I saw some of the, like I said, I saw some of the things just recently that Stadia has on their marketplace, and I'm just like, okay. I would have thought they would have been hanging on by a thread, but they ain't. There are enough people there, and the product is good enough where there's an undercurrent, there's a growing consumer base there, and it's something that somebody just got photo bombed. No
I heard it
worries.
too. I was like, yeah, we'll go ahead and go ahead.
That's hilarious. But I think that's and I think that's the frustration with Google in comparison to everybody else. If they just would focus on just for a little bit, you don't have to be for a long time. If you focus on putting the cloud platform out and really you know do what you said you were going to do in terms of you know really building your own development studio. I remember when we first talked about that, and we were super mad excited. It's like, man, they're gonna do their own games. They got their own development studio. Oh, this about to be hot. And then crickets. It's just
Absolute
okay,
crickets.
absolute crickets. But it kind of is what it is. Um, Saying that, we have our second ad break, and once we come back, we will be talking about favorite fighting games and favorite fighting game characters. Now, your boy has been inspired this week. You know, I'm hunting for my fight stick as I speak. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking about this. Stay tuned.
We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
A black future happens all the time. It's built on a foundation of those who have paved the way. A generation ago, all of this would have seemed unheard of. And what's new to the world now will be incomparable to what's coming up next. Trust your dream. The future is counting on it.
And we are back. Before we get started, I just got to give a really quick shout out to AT&T for the dope ads that our HBCU digital overlords have given us to run on our show. Those things are really, really nice. Um, if anybody follows AT&T, obviously, I have AT&T service, so this is not a shameless plug for their service. But they do a pretty good job with minority stuff. And, we were kind of surprised to get the ads, but it was pretty dope at the same time because AT&T is looking at us as a sponsor. So, again, yes, exactly. Big shout out to AT&T for the ads. And that being said, we're going to get into some fighting. Yes, sir. And, we talked about this earlier in the week. And the topic we came up with was your favorite fighting games and favorite fighting game characters. Now, I would be remiss that the inspiration for this topic came from me just happening to stumble across another video of Leroy Smith destroying people in Tekken 7. If anybody is familiar with Leroy Smith, how can I describe his character? Think of a black Ip Man with dreads.
I was so excited when they announced him in Tekken. I'm like, yep, I'm about to get back on Tekken. Y'all
And
had me. I was a Christie fan for the longest. Y'all gave me this man. I'm good now.
And he's probably got the dopest ending theme ever in the history of Tekken. You ever listen to that dude's fight song, man? You be like, yeah, I want to play again. So, yeah, I mean, now, mind you, fighting games for me, I go back to this is a loaded question for me because when I was in college at Bama State, we had Soul Calibur, we had Killer Instinct 1 and 2, we had all the Street Fighters, Marvel versus Capcom, all of those games. So, it's hard for me to kind of sift through all of that and think about what my single favorite fighting game was because it's impossible. 2 or 3, yeah. I was a real big Soul Calibur, that franchise. I love that franchise. I love Killer Instinct 1 and 2. Killer Instinct 2 was bringing in the bread during my junior year when a brother was coming from band practice and hungry. going right to the student center and hitting the game room and by the time I get done, I had dinner for the week. So, I mean, those games, Tekken obviously to me is one of the best fighting game platforms ever. In terms of its success, in terms of the actual community that's the competitive community that's developed around it. I mean, all you gotta do is look at Evo. That circuit, man, that developed around Tekken 7 has been out for how long?
I kind of got to disagree with you on that one. I gotta. You want to talk about fighting game franchises that are epitome of fighting games? You gotta say Street Fighter.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying they aren't. I'm just stating a personal preference in terms of what, and from a competitive standpoint, from a competitive community.
Understand. Well, Tekken 7 is super competitive. I like Tekken 7. I like what they did with 6. I like the new characters and stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I think I was always a Lei Long cat. Drunken master. Multiple martial arts. But I think you know, it's very interesting when we really talk about this topic, and we think about the history of these games. Like, we kind of all went through phases where I know for me, oh yeah, Street Fighter is daddy. We got you, Brandon. um, Shout out to Brandon for joining the show. Thank you, man. Um, and of course, eh, Tekken is straight.
I mean, well, let's put it this way: it's Brandon's a good friend of mine. He's really big into the fighting game community. He's actually making a name for himself in Guilty Gear Strive now.
And now I've heard a lot of really good things
Guilty
about Guilty
Gears.
Gear. Guilty Gear is
I love
ridiculous.
Guilty Gear. When I started playing Guilty Gear, I played Accent Core. I was always Amelia Rage character because she fights with her hair. It's a lot of juggling, it's a lot of text, it's a lot of counters.
Yeah.
But Guilty Gear
And
is actually trying to make a comeback with Strive.
well, and I think there's a lot of room for Guilty Gear to make that comeback because to be honest with you, yeah, Tekken, Street Fighter, those games, Mortal Kombat, those games and franchises are iconic, but there's always room for new fighting games that are really, really good. And I mean,
Are we
like
just going to ignore Smash Brothers?
Yes, we
yeah,
are. Yes,
yeah.
yes,
I
we
mean,
are.
yeah,
Let me go ahead and answer that for you. Yes,
yeah. I mean,
yes.
I'll be honest with you,
I mean,
and this is
don't get me wrong. I like Smash Brothers, but calling it a fighting game, no, I will
yeah,
not
Well,
do
I
that.
mean, they
I
play it at
promise you,
Evo,
I
don't
won't.
yeah,
they?
they do.
They-
But I'm gonna say this about Smash Brothers, man.
I mean, that's one of the. I mean, it's not in the traditional sense of a fighting game, but
I
I
mean,
mean,
if we're gonna talk about games like Smash Bros, I'd have to go with the old school Marvel versus Capcom, Capcom versus SNK. If we're gonna do team
Yeah,
battles,
I
I
have
like
very fond
the.
memories of Marvel vs.
Ooh,
Capcom.
yeah,
thank you.
Marvel
Ooh,
vs.
that's about to
Yeah,
say
Oh man,
yeah,
Capcom
yeah.
versus it, and let's not forget King of Fighters.
Oh yeah,
The
King of
new
Fighters
King
was
of Fighters.
legit. King of
Shermie will
Fighters was legit.
forever be Bay in King of
Yeah.
Fighters for me.
Now, I mean, since you guys are taking it back, who remembers games like Star Gladiator?
oh man,
Sir,
yeah.
sir.
Now, I've been waiting for a development company to, just have the guts to redevelop the game because it was such a cool concept. You know,
It, it was a good game.
um, I mean, there are some games out there, some fighting game franchises that uh, were kind of hit and miss for me. Bloody Roar was one of them for me.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah,
I like
Bloody Roar. I mean, if you're gonna do Bloody Roar, you might as well do
Definitely
Killer
take it
Instinct
back.
because it was better.
Killer Instinct to me, and this is just my personal opinion. Killer Instinct 1 and 2 were some of the most underrated fighting games out there, the originals.
Hmm.
The remake that that people are competing with that Bungie and Microsoft did to remake it in Rare. Um, I like it. I played it. Um, but it just it's hard for me to kind of put a finger on it. But it's like they took the first two Killer Instinct games, tried to combine the combination systems of both and the play mechanics of both, but they didn't exactly get it. They were supposed to create something unique, and they kind of halfway did it, but they halfway didn't. And then they started, adding other characters to it. Some of the characters really dope, like the Battletoads character that they added to the game, custom character. Um, who else? General Ram from I think General Ram from they they added the Arbiter, not General Ram. They added the Arbiter from Halo, as a character. That was pretty dope.
I
Um,
mean, if you're gonna do like games with a lot of mods, you might as well just do Mugen. Put everybody in it.
yeah, Mugen's
That's
good.
my opinion. I mean, Mugen is fun because you can literally play with anybody versus anybody, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, and I would be remiss to not talk about the current generation of um fighting games without talking about the Dragon Ball series of games. You know, Dragon Ball Z Fighters, those sorts of games. And I think, you know, ultimately they have to grow on you. They're very niche, in my opinion. Um, but it is it's definitely something that if you're familiar with the Dragon Ball, uh franchise and ethos, you love it. Me personally, I dig it. Brandon,
Yeah, button mashing.
button man. Yeah, man. But and I mean, he's right to an extent too, because some folks, uh, really, really frustrate other people just by doing that on that game. Now, mind you, Tekken and Virtua Fighter had characters that were button mashing characters. Like when Eddie Gordo was first introduced to Tekken,
Ooh,
people used to hate him because he would just spam the same combo over and over and over again. Me personally, I hated playing King characters. I hated playing King players,
that grappling was
particularly
ugh.
particularly on Tekken 3 and above when King started getting the multi throws in there and the multi part combinations in. I used to hate hate playing that dude.
I gotta admit that Tekken wasn't necessarily my cup of tea back in the day because I could never pull off any of the combos. Like my outside of Street Fighter, I don't know. I just was not that great at Tekken. But outside of Street Fighter, I would say the only other fighting game that I was pretty decent at was Dead or Alive. I love Dead or Alive.
Oh,
Now,
let's not forget Dead of Alive. I forget.
now, yeah, Dead or Alive was something that I never really got into to play, but just looking at it, it was a really, really good looking game.
I like the fact you could
Um,
do reverses or not counters or whatever.
yeah, and I mean that was really one of your real first parry
Parries.
types
That's
of
what I
fight,
meant.
yeah,
Yeah.
parries types of fighting games. You know, and yeah, Brandon is coming through in a clutch with with some of the gaming history, and I mean, like I said, I got inspired looking at talking about this because again, I was looking at footage of Leroy Smith, which to me, besides being one of the coolest characters in Tekken that Tekken has put out in a long time, he pisses a lot of people off on Evo because he is insanely in the hands of somebody that knows how to play with him. He is insanely effective. Um, and it's something that is I'm like I said, I'm watching a couple of I've watching my boy play this week and watching a couple of videos on YouTube of professional players has got me like, yeah, I'm going to go get me the sticks.
Yeah, but they
Yeah,
did nerf him though. They did an update. It took a lot of his shit away, but he's still effective and aggravating. I'll tell you that.
yeah, and I think for a lot of characters, they go through that process too. Because some characters that particularly on the competition circuit that they've introduced that they knew were completely overpowered, they were just like, okay, yeah, we got to do something about this because people are getting too pissed off. So yeah, I mean, and I think Leroy fell into that category immediately because of his parry ability. That dude, you couldn't really sustain any sort of combo offense with him because of how he could parry and reverse attacks. So yeah, I can understand how he certain things in his got nerfed, but it still doesn't really take away how cool the character is. Um, on a side note, they did a Tekken anime on Netflix, and they nerfed the hell out of that dude in the anime.
Hmm.
I'm just like, I was really pissed. I was like, man, really, really, fam, you gonna have him go out like that? Do you just have him just go out like a complete sucker in the first match? It's like that's messed up, man. That's really messed up. But I think you know before we kind of go into our final ad break and do our closing, I wanted folks to, yeah, I'm sure. Go ahead, man. That's messed up. But I wanted people that watch us to really think about those things when it comes to fighting games, because there are certain ingredients to fighting games that really make them special. The one, particularly certain types of franchises. Um, there are some franchises that are, you know, again, iconic. Mortal Kombat, whatever iterations you've seen, the superhero version of the Injustice engine. Um, when they merged the two worlds of Mortal Kombat versus Injustice. Um, those sorts of things are pretty iconic. I would love to see Soul Calibur back. You know,
Yes. Oh man, I totally forgot about Soul Calibur.
Man,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I would
I love
love to
Soul
see.
Calibur.
I would love to.
give me Taki or give me Maxi and let's get it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh man,
Let's
I
get
used to
it.
kill over Taki. Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
get it.
yeah. I mean, I would love to see Soul Calibur back. Um, and, I would love to see, how. Well, I mean, we kind of already saw what this collabo between Street Fighter and Tekken kind of turned into. you know, um, as it relates to um, their collabo on that platform. We're seeing we're seeing integration of Street Fighter, Street Fighter and King of Fighters, um, not King of Fighters, but Fatal Fury characters in Tekken and vice versa for Street Fighter. So it's good to see that sort of creativity coming back. Um, but let me go ahead and, because I've kind of got my informal cue to go and hit this ad so we can kind of close out. This will be my last ad break of the show. And when we come back, we will close it out. Stay tuned.
Yeah, baby, you know what time it is. Now let's get it started. Are you kidding me? Unreal!
While our HBCUs are mostly known for academic rigor, community, they also know how to turn up.
Does he have it? Yes, he does! And that might be the knockout punch.
And we are back. Again, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Black Techies podcast, courtesy of HBCU Digital Network. Thank you for our guests, well, for our co-hosts, not guests, Package Steeler, aka Founder Emeritus Dave Matthews, Miss Leslie Moore, uh, you know, gamer and entrepreneur extraordinaire. Thank you for our folks in the peanut gallery with the commentary. We love y'all. Thank y'all. We need you. We need to see more of y'all back. So pass the word. Um, and for those of you guys watching, I can't emphasize this enough. We are here, on this platform, HBC Digital, and on our podcast because of you guys. Uh, this started back a couple of years ago. This was a twinkle in Dave's eye. We had this idea for for the podcast, and it turned into something that really fills a niche. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you guys, checking us out and giving us an idea, giving us a chance to really explore what that niche is for us to fill. So we really, really appreciate it. Um, as we close this show, I want to give a big shout out to first the HBCU esports gaming community, specifically, the HBCU esports gaming league, and every iteration of it, the HBCU esports gaming alliance, um, and a number of folks that are affiliated with those platforms, and every HBCU out there that has an esports club or a team or a program. Please get y'all behinds on social media, please. Create a Twitter account, create a Twitch account, create an Instagram, something that we can track y'all and put y'all into a centralized list where people can find you because people are looking for you, namely us. So, I mean, get out there, hit us up. If you got your social media handles for Twitter, you know, Twitch, whatever the platform is, YouTube, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Facebook in the Black Techie Collective, and you know, we will get you out there. We shot you out there. I know we recently shouted out, you know, Coppin State. They have an esports program. Big shout out to Benedict. You know, not only do they have an esports degree program and team, but they got a nice shiny new esports game room and training facility on that campus that looks fire, really, really fire. Um, big shout out to the um, big shout out to more specifically the conferences. You know, both the MEAC and the SWAC have their own esports leagues and platforms, and you know, it would be a huge, you know, it would be huge for you guys to support those platforms. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, please. Please rate us on iTunes, please. That's how we get our metrics up. And, you know, it's just nice. Just rate us on iTunes, please. You know, it's the same content that you see here, except it's on iTunes and pretty much any other place that has podcasts. So don't forget to hit us up. And that's it for me. You guys got any last words?
Coming up on 2 years since my first interview on the Black Techies podcast.
That's right.
Anniversaries.
I know,
Yeah.
right? You can go back and listen/watch it.
Yeah,
YouTube.com/Black Techies.
that was my first podcast right after I started my business, and then Dave invited me to start coming on the show. So it's almost been 2 years.
And now she's a big time streamer on Twitch.
Yep.
I'm trying. I am trying. In fact, I'm doing my birthday stream on Wednesday. My birthday is Wednesday. I'm streaming majority of the day Wednesday.
Yeah. Hey, if you got Amazon Prime, go ahead and give her a sub. It's
Please
free.
give me your sub. It helps me a lot. That little Twitch check, it comes in clutch. Trust me. I appreciate every sub, every bit that's donated, and I appreciate all my friends in the community as well.
Yeah.
And my sponsors, like Lauren Hazel is the founder of Black Nerd Swag, and she's one of my sponsors.
Yep. Big shout out to Lauren Hazel, Black Nerd Swag, her crew. From the sounds of it, they are deep. So give them a big shout out. Speaking of channels, we can also be found on Twitch at the TBT podcast. You see our overlay, you know, on our stream. You'll see the 3 major platforms that we're on: Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. You'll see us on YouTube at the Black Techies podcast, and you can catch us live on the first 2 Saturdays of every month on the HBCU Digital Network. So any of those platforms, hit us up, particularly HBCU Digital Network. It's a heck of a platform, y'all. Check it out. Not just for the techies, but for everything else in between associated with the HBCU culture. So until then, hail Wakanda.
Hail Wakanda.
Hail Wakanda.
The first ever HBCU Band Anthology, The HBCU Experience. The HBCU Band Alumni Edition is a collection of stories written by prominent HBCU band alumni throughout the world. HBCU band alumni who are doing great things in their careers, businesses, and communities nationally and internationally. The authors share their stories and experiences of how being a HBCU band member has molded them into the people they are today. Purchase your copy today and support the HBCU